I never imagined I'd bury my mom before I turned 20. She wasn't just a mother, she was the glue, the energy, the air in our home. When she died, the world didn't just go dark. It flattened. Everything suddenly felt quiet, like someone had pressed mute on my life. The funeral was a blur. People I hadn't seen in years showed up in black, offering weak hugs and pitying eyes. I couldn't cry. I just stood there, stiff and hollow, holding my dad's hand like I was the child again. But what really stuck with me was him. My dad. He didn't shed a single tear, not even when they lowered her into the ground. He stood like a stone, jaw clenched, nodding as if he was at a board meeting. It was unsettling. At first, I chalked it up to shock. Grief hits people differently, right? But then we got home. The silence in the house was unbearable. No more music in the kitchen. No smell of her perfume. No random humming from the laundry room. Just Dad and me. Breathing in opposite corners of a place that no longer felt like home. He started sitting in the living room long after I'd gone to bed, lights off, TV on static. I'd find him just staring, holding Mom's photo, whispering things I couldn't make out. And then there were the hugs. Long, lingering. Too tight. They started feeling different. Grief, they say, comes in waves. But for me, it felt more like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. I returned to school a week after the funeral, thinking the routine would help. But everything felt off. Friends gave me those sad, understanding looks and said things like, "If you ever need to talk," but I didn't want to talk. I wanted my mom. Back home, everything reminded me of her. The teacup still sitting by the sink. Her scarf draped over the couch. Her half-read novel on the nightstand. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything. I left them where she last placed them, like some part of her was still lingering. Dad, though. He was different. At first, he buried himself in chores. Vacuumed twice a day. Polished floors. Folded laundry obsessively. It was like he couldn't sit still for a second. But the moment the sun set, he changed. He'd pour himself a glass of scotch, sit in her favorite chair, and stare at the fireplace even when there wasn't a fire. It was during one of those late nights that he first said something strange. I was passing through the living room to grab water when he stopped me. "Hey," he said, softly. "You look so much like her." I froze. "Like Mom?" He nodded. His eyes looked glassy. "Same eyes. Same smile. Sometimes when I hear your voice, it brings her back." I didn't know what to say, so I mumbled something like, "Thanks," and rushed back to my room. But that became a pattern. He'd find me late at night and start talking quiet, confessional tones. How much he missed her. How lonely the nights were. How empty the house felt. I listened the first few times. I mean, it was my dad. And I felt for him. He'd lost his partner of 25 years. That has to hurt. But soon, his compliments turned specific. "You know, your hair looks exactly like how she wore it in college. You've grown into such a beautiful woman, just like your mom. Sometimes when I look at you, it's like she's still here." At first, I told myself it was innocent. Grieving people say weird things, right? But the more it happened, the more it felt off. His eyes lingered too long. His hugs lasted too long. I started avoiding him when the sun went down. I'd pretend to be asleep just to skip the late-night talks. The worst part? I couldn't talk to anyone about it. What was I supposed to say? I think my grieving father is getting emotionally confused and crossing boundaries with me. Even writing that now makes me sick to my stomach. But I knew deep in my gut this wasn't going to stop on its own. It was a Thursday night. The kind of night where the wind howled a little too loud and the silence inside the house felt like it had weight. I was in my room, trying to lose myself in a podcast, when Dad knocked. 3 soft taps. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice low. I hesitated. I'd been dodging him for days. Pretending to be asleep, locking my door, leaving plates in the sink just to avoid being around too long. But something in his tone made me pause. "Sure," I said. My voice came out dry. He sat at the edge of my bed, rubbing his hands like he didn't know where to start. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began. "About your mom. About how much she meant to me." I nodded, eyes fixed on the carpet. "We never had secrets," he said. "We were each other's everything. And since she died, it's like I'm hollow." I swallowed hard. "She knew me better than anyone ever could. She touched my soul," he continued. "And sometimes, when I look at you, I see her. I feel her." The room suddenly felt too small. "I need you to help me feel close to her again." He reached out and took my hand. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was racing, my ears were ringing. I couldn't tell if I was about to cry or scream or run. "What? What do you mean?" I asked, even though I knew. Somewhere deep down, I already knew. He didn't say anything at first. Just stared at our hands, his thumb grazing mine in a way that made my skin crawl. "I don't know," he said finally, voice trembling. "Maybe I'm just lonely. Maybe I'm losing it. But sometimes I think, if I could just hold someone who felt like her." He trailed off, as if saying it out loud scared even him. I pulled my hand away, slowly. "Dad," I said, barely above a whisper, "this isn't okay." He blinked, like I'd slapped him. "I wasn't," he started, but stopped himself. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't. I'm broken, sweetheart." I got up. "I need to go to bed." He stood up, nodded slowly, and walked out without another word. I locked my door that night. And every night after. But the damage was done. That line, that invisible boundary, had been crossed. And no apology could uncross it. I lay in bed, heart pounding, wondering what had just happened. Was my dad grieving? Or had I just seen a side of him I was never supposed to see? It wasn't just that talk. It was everything that came after. At first, I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe grief was making us both weird. But then the little things started. Like how he'd sit too close on the couch during movie nights. Or how his hand would rest on my back a second too long when I got up to leave. Once, I woke up from a nap on the living room couch, and he was just staring. Not watching TV. Not on his phone. Just staring at me like he was trying to memorize something. It felt wrong. I started locking my bedroom door. Every night. I even pushed a chair up against the knob just in case. I told myself I was being paranoid, dramatic. But my gut wouldn't let me rest. He began knocking on my door late at night. "Just wanted to say goodnight," he'd say through the wood. Sometimes I'd pretend to be asleep. Other times I'd whisper, "Goodnight," without opening the door. One night, I caught him in the hallway, standing there. Not knocking. Just standing. In the dark. His face in shadows. I froze. "What are you doing?" I asked. He blinked, like I'd startled him. "Just checking on you," he said. "You sleep like your mom, face down, one leg kicked out." Always thought that was cute. My skin crawled. I started changing in the bathroom, even though my room had a lock. I started sleeping in oversized clothes, cocooned under layers of blankets even in the heat. I couldn't breathe, but it was better than feeling exposed. I told myself he hadn't done anything. Not really. But something inside me kept screaming that it was coming. That we were walking a line we shouldn't even be near. I missed Mom more than ever. Her scent still lingered on the scarf in my closet, the one I hadn't washed in months. I'd hold it sometimes and cry, asking her, begging her, what do I do? But there was no answer. Just silence. And footsteps in the hallway. I thought about telling someone. Aunt Grace, maybe. She and Mom were close. She'd called a few times after the funeral, always saying, if you ever need anything, I'm just a phone call away. But every time I reached for my phone, my hand would stop mid-air. What would I even say? That my dad was acting weird? That his hugs were too long? That he said I reminded him of my dead mom too much? It sounded insane. Petty. Like I was reading too deeply into grief. People would say, he's just lonely, or he's still mourning, give him grace. But it didn't feel like grief. It felt like a shadow slowly spreading across the walls of my life. I tried hinting once to the school counselor. I said, home has been uncomfortable lately. She smiled politely and said, that's normal after losing a parent. Everyone grieves differently. I nodded. Swallowed the lump in my throat. And never brought it up again. Dad started asking questions constantly. Where are you going? Who were you talking to? Why didn't you answer your phone? I wasn't allowed to be vague anymore. Every outing needed details. Every friendship needed explanation. If I was home 5 minutes late, he'd be waiting at the window like a hawk. It's not safe anymore, he'd say. The world's different now. I just want to protect you. But it didn't feel like protection. It felt like control. Like being watched. Like being owned. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. I began to dread weekends. No escape. No teachers. No distractions. Just the sound of the clock ticking on the wall and Dad asking if I wanted to watch another movie, like old times. I said no. He frowned. Then smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. I started thinking about packing a bag. Leaving. But I didn't know where I'd go. I was still too young, too broke, too unsure. So I stayed. Trapped in a home that no longer felt like mine. And every night, I asked myself, is this grief or something else? It happened on a night soaked with rain. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall but crashes. Thunder rolled over the roof like distant footsteps, and every shadow in my room felt heavier than usual. I was halfway through pretending to study when I heard the front door creak open late. Too late. Then came the sound of keys clattering to the floor. A heavy grunt. Shoes kicked off lazily. And then, silence. My stomach twisted. I stayed still, barely breathing. Then his voice. Slurred. Close. Sweetheart? I didn't answer. Footsteps on the hallway floorboards. Slow. Measured. He was coming my way. Hey. His voice was softer now, almost boyish. Can we talk? I jumped up, locked my bedroom door. He tried the handle. It's just me. Open up, he said, laughing awkwardly. You don't need to do that. I backed up, eyes darting to the window. Second floor. No escape. Then I heard it, the unmistakable click of the lock turning. I forgot he had a spare key to every door in the house. He stepped in, soaked from the rain, eyes glassy. He smelled like beer, sweat, and something sour. You're all I have now, he mumbled, stepping forward. You don't know what it's like. Losing the love of your life. He reached out his hand. That's when I bolted past him and locked myself in the bathroom. I pressed my back against the door, heart racing, hands trembling. He was mumbling something on the other side. I couldn't even make out the words anymore. But I knew I couldn't stay quiet. I grabbed my phone with slippery fingers and called the one person I trusted, Emily, my best friend. The moment she picked up and heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. I whispered, I think I think something really bad is about to happen. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need them. She said she was coming. Now. With her mom. And that I wasn't alone. That call, her voice, saved me. Because just as I heard Emily's car pull into our driveway, Dad started knocking again. Not hard. But this time, he was crying. I didn't mean to scare you, he said. Please open the door. I didn't. I waited until I heard Emily calling my name from the porch. Only then did I open the bathroom, grab my bag, and run. I never went back home. That night, Emily's mom drove me straight to my Aunt Caroline's place. No questions, just warm blankets, warm tea, and the kind of silence that feels safe. I remember sitting on the edge of her guest bed, shaking. My phone buzzed over and over again, Dad's name lighting up the screen. I blocked him the next morning. The police were never involved. I couldn't bring myself to explain everything. I just told Aunt Caroline enough to make sure I could stay. She didn't push. She hugged me instead, longer than I expected. That hug did something my dad's never did. It felt like protection. Therapy came weeks later. At first, I sat stiff in the chair, arms crossed, answering everything with, "I'm fine." But eventually, the cracks opened. I told the therapist how my dad used to linger in doorways, how his hand would rest too long on my shoulder, how he made me feel like a ghost of my mother rather than a daughter. I cried when I said it out loud. And it felt like breathing for the first time. A year has passed. I'm still living with Aunt Caroline. I'm in school again, working part-time, and really trying to find normal again. Dad still hasn't stopped trying to reach me. I hear from cousins or relatives that he misses me. That he's not himself anymore. But I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. Because some wounds don't bleed. Some bruises don't show up on skin. But I carry them. In the way I flinch when someone knocks unexpectedly. In the way I triple-check locks. In the way I wake up sometimes, gasping, thinking I'm back in that house. Some wounds aren't visible. But I carry them everywhere I go.